And we will try to screw it up less next time, although we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up. And welcome to This Week in Worcester Podcast. I am Tom Marino. I am the host of This Week in Worcester. I am joined by Mr. John Edward Keogh. He is the executive producer for Managing Media. He is the president of Hollywood Film Group. He is a This Week in Worcester contributor. He is my friend, John. Hey, John, happy Easter to you and happy Easter to all our other Christian viewers.
Happy Easter to you, my friend. I also would say happy Passover to our
Indeed. Good call.
Our Jewish population that likes to watch our show.
Absolutely. Pardon me for missing the obvious.
And also happy Marathon Day to all the people that are going to be crazy tomorrow and get up and run 26.2 miles, partially through Haverhill, which is always an interesting way to do things.
Let me be the first to say that even if somebody's chasing me, I am not in any way running 26 miles. Nope.
You don't want to go to the lovely town of Hopkinton for a little while?
I mean, I'm not, worried about Hopkinton. I'm worried about 26 miles. That
is a long. 26 miles is a long.
Yeah, no.
No.
If you're watching, you probably saw the quite provocative description of our show today. We're going to a little bit later on. We'll talk about the departure of the superintendent of schools. We'll also talk about the push for more revenue from private institutions of higher learning in the city, universities, and colleges. But first, once again, we are just compelled to talk about what I'm now going to call the 5-month gaslighting campaign by the City of Worcester, related to the Department of Justice report on the Worcester Police Department.
So I brought cookies so I can watch you talk, because that's how this is going to go.
No, it's not. It's not. Let me do a little setup. As many of you know, November 15th, 2022, the Department of Justice announced it would launch a pattern and practice investigation into the City of Worcester and the Worcester Police Department. Pattern and practice investigation was created in the crime bill of 1994, was very much talked about in 2 elections ago because it was, I think, sponsored by, or certainly promoted heavily by, Joe Biden. This bill is bad stuff, and likely it has played a significant role in, widespread incarceration of people, especially Black men, that has occurred over the last 30 years. In that bill, there's one section that created these investigations. When it transfers from the bill into federal code, it's all of 212 words. I think it is just a little over 200 words. These investigations were designed to be anonymous. So it actually says in federal law that the data gathered in pattern and practice investigations shall be anonymous for statistical purposes only and shall not name any victim or law enforcement officer. The pattern and practice is for obviously patterns or practices that are illegal and violate civil rights. So they announced that in November 15th, 2022. Shortly thereafter, the Worcester Regional Research Bureau put out a really great paper on pattern and practices investigations, and they found that I think there was 79. I believe Worcester. It's not clear if Worcester was included in the count or not, but it was. Let's call it about 80 of these investigations occurred prior to Worcester, or Worcester was the 80th. That would put it, of the 15,000 law enforcement agencies in the country, over 30 years, the Department of Justice has launched this investigation against 0.63. That is a little bit over 1/2 of 1 percentage point of all law enforcement agencies in the country. So to be the subject of this investigation, you are in an elite class of bad. If you measure bad police departments by a pattern or practice of violating civil rights, it firmly puts Worcester amongst the worst police departments in the country. By at least this measure. Just being the subject of this investigation. Most of these investigations, as is typical for the Department of Justice, when they announce something publicly, that's usually your act. That usually means this is not going to go well for you once they go public about any criminal investigation, especially the criminal side, especially. But this is not supposed to be to single people out. They're supposed to say, what I hoped would be just the announcement of the investigation. I hoped it would be a wake-up call to the city council, to the city administration, to the police department. There's actually problems you need to address here. Just like residents in the city have been telling you forever, basically. I went back and looked at some video from 2014 where there was it was after I'm going to forget his name, St. Louis, the person that was killed by a police officer in St. Louis, just outside of St. Louis, Michael Brown. It was the day after Michael Brown was killed in just outside St. Louis. There was protests here and across the country, and it was actually a moment there. The police allowed some stuff to happen that they normally didn't, and the protest organizers communicated with police. In the end of the day, it was kind of a love fest. Everybody was saying everybody acted right that day. It happened to be on a Tuesday, and many of the protesters, or a group of the protesters, I don't know if it was many, went to City Hall that night. Yep, some yelled and screamed and had a lot of emotion, because emotion is, apparently bad in this city. And some didn't. Some spoke very eloquently. But the one that stuck with me was, and I would give the woman who said this credit. I just don't remember her name. But what she said stuck with me. They hate us, and we know they hate us because they tell us. And I think that's a really great synopsis of what the people of the city of Worcester have been told by their city government for the last 5 months. In this, another phase of this was opened up this past Tuesday in a meeting before the, or a meeting of the Committee on Public Safety, the City Council Committee on Public Safety. Chair of that committee is Kate Toomey. This is, I'm not even saying anything controversial here. Everybody in the city knows this. Kate Toomey is a booster for the police unions. That's her focus of her role as a city councilor. She's a booster for the police unions. And the mayor, who, look, I like the mayor. He's a very likable man. I believe he's a good man. But he catches some shrapnel here because he keeps appointing a booster for the police unions to the head of that committee. And she's in her 10th year. At the end of this year, it'll be a decade. She's led that committee, and it's done nothing of substance. It does nothing. Kate Toomey has never taken a position that is even slight deviation from the police department. Every dollar they want, she supports. Every policy they want, she supports. Every tool they want, she supports. And that she's continues to be appointed to that committee as the police department is falling apart at the seams, because that's what it did. Is the mayor's going to catch some shrapnel for that? On Tuesday, the chief of police, who I have been a vocal supporter of, I continue to support, but did he lose a lot of points on Tuesday? He spoke for about 23 minutes about what the department has done or is in the process of doing but keeps making the point that it's not in response to the report, of course, that all these things that they're doing now, which most of which should have been done 20 years ago, has nothing to do with the federal investigation or the report. It was all underway. And they keep pointing out that this only covers 2018 to 2022, the DOJ investigation. So the first ridiculous gaslighting argument is that from January 1st, 2023, when the last chief was still chief for another 9 months, and we can talk about what a wonderful guy he is, or was at least as chief of police. But from January 1st, 2023 to present, they fixed all the problems in the police department. Everything's perfect now. Everything's perfect. So after he spent 23 minutes going over what they've done or are doing, all of which are they're reviewing more body camera footage as a rule. Supervisors are reviewing more body camera footage. That's good. There's additional training in a number of areas. That's great. And they have written a bunch of stuff down. In other words, they've created a bunch of new policies. But the word that has yet to be said by anybody in city government is enforcement. They had policies before. When they were violated, there was no enforcement of them. People who violated policies, even if it hurt people or try to send people to prison for things they didn't do, which is about the worst thing government can do. If not the worst, it's up there. Nothing happened to them. They get a pat in the butt, and it was basically, if you do something that's obviously against the policy or in some cases the law, and you get a pat in the butt and told it's all right, and the Bureau of Professional Acquittals will write a cover-up report for you, and then they put you back on the street, what does it matter what you write down? You can write down whatever you want. You can write down police officers aren't allowed to breathe on the job. But if they breathe and you don't do anything, and now for 5 months, we've been told it's been a nonstop attack on the report. And you can, the police department then released a press release that articulates all their issues with the report. You get the wrong guy if you think I am going to sit here and advocate for the federal government. I'm not going to do it. Although at this point, I have more faith in the federal government than I do in the city of Worcester's government. That's for sure.
Which is saying something.
Which is saying something, because the federal government is an absolute unmitigated disaster. Now,
yeah, it is.
There's 3 points I want to talk about. You want to read all of the objections to the DOJ report. They're on the city website under police press releases. So after he spoke for 23 minutes on what they're doing, he then spoke for, and I pulled the video and made sure I timed it. He spoke for the next 35 minutes on everything that was wrong with the report. I just want to take up 3 things. First of all, in their written objections, he said this in the meeting. Anything that starts with the officer's incident report says, just stop right there. Time out. We learned at the last city council meeting, or 2 city council meetings ago, under questioning by Christian King, the chief told us, as you brought up last week, and you know what? I didn't really think it was that big a deal, but how quickly it has become a big deal. The chief acknowledged that there are Worcester police officers on the Brady list. What's the Brady list? The Brady list is a list of officers that the district attorney will not put in front of a judge or jury because they're known liars. That's what they are. They're known liars. They have either shown a willingness to lie in court before a jury or a judge, which for the rest of us is a felony, or they've been shown to be liars on police reports, incident reports, which is providing false information to the DA in order to get somebody charged for a thing likely they didn't do. Why are they lying if they didn't do that? If they did the thing? So these are people who can arrest people, but you can't put them in front of a judge to talk about the arrest. Why are they police officers? Why are they police officers?
And generally speaking, in other municipalities, if the officers are on the Brady list, they're almost never on active patrol duty. They're usually shifted into internal roles where their signatures don't make it onto investigatory reports because those signatures become a trail for defense attorneys to attack the legitimacy of a case, right? So there's there's a famous one. There's a lawyer in Bristol County, not Bristol County, Plymouth County, Kevin Reddington, who's like really famous for getting people charged with murder acquitted. And there was an officer on the Brady list. This is like maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And this officer, all they did was sign an evidence bag. Like they signed an evidence bag. And so then Reddington made his case that nothing could be trusted from that officer signing that evidence bag because he was on the Brady list. It made a huge stink about it, demonstrated, proven, dishonest person. And it was at a very spectacular moment. Reddington asked for what's called a directed finding by the judge and asked for the judge to declare his client not guilty. And it's only happened like 5 times in the last 40 years in Massachusetts. And he did. He did. And he said specifically, this piece of evidence establishes reasonable doubt. And so that's the thing, is that if you have an officer who's dishonest as a track record, right, that establishes reasonable doubt as potential all kinds of things. And defense attorney's job is to take that. And so maybe you do have a guy who you and I aren't even talking about innocence. I'm not even talking about innocence. Let's say there's a case where someone's guilty.
Exactly.
And they're guilty, and they need to go to jail because it protects the community. These officers can't testify in those cases because it could potentially lead to that person who needs to go to jail not going to jail. We're not even, that's what we're trying to say here, which I don't think. I think, again, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's actually a key point I'm going to wrap in at the end here. So there's a bunch of things that the response from the chief was. The officer's incident report says, stop right there, tell me who it is. Because you have this police department, and it's really time to start talking about the police department and talk about the city council. City council hires the city manager. The chief works for the city manager. The city council loves to play the game that it has no power. It has or else power. It can at any point say to the city manager, if they have a majority, no, this is what you're going to do, and if you don't do that, we're going to find somebody who will. That's the most power you can have, right? Because they can fire the city manager without cause at any time. And the city council tolerates this nonsense. So that's the first thing, is the officer's incident report says, wait a minute, tell me who it is. And they're not going to do that but they like to say transparency at the bottom of their press release, though, which I found hilarious. I think in the terms in the official dictionary of the City of Worcester government, I think that somehow there was an administrative error, and the definition of gaslighting and transparency got swapped. Because there's no transparency, there's only gaslighting. What you see isn't what you see. You're too stupid. We're the experts. That's the message. And in the whole 5 months has been just laced with we're so annoyed we have to deal with this. Like, how dare you impugn us? Well, if you had kept the control of your own house, you wouldn't be in this situation. Another thing the chief said, whoa, is this a doozy? This is when I was at the meeting along with John, and this is where I wanted to throw my chair across the room.
You did want to throw your chair. That's true.
And I don't lose my cool in public very often. I yell and scream here or whatever, but I don't lose my cool in public very often. I lost my cool on Tuesday, that's for sure. The chief said, I couldn't believe it came out of his mouth. The chief said that the department arrested somebody once. No time frame. No, that's it. We arrested somebody once. It was a man who was pretending to be a police officer, and he had a sex crimes background. And then intimated, so there, couldn't have been us. Must have been. Let's think about this. Let's think this through for a minute. We're talking about people in the commercial sex trade at the street level. Yes. Do these people have problems? Absolutely. how they got there, whether it was a self-made problem, the product of addiction, the product of mental health, some combination of all that and other issues. These are people who are surviving in parts of this city that most people in the city wouldn't go to in the daytime, never mind at night. And these people are surviving in that environment. So what you're telling me is that these people have such a lack of street smarts that they're just getting conned by fake cops everywhere you turn. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense.
And it also goes against the chief's public testimony that he's given now in multiple places, including the Telegram and Gazette, where he admitted that 4 officers self-reported sexual contact. And that's the thing.
No, Henry. I like good cops. Cops that are trying to do their job. Here's the constant trope. You guys hate police. Police are not a monolith. They don't share a single brain. These are 500, just under 500 individuals that work at the police department. Most of them are trying to do their job the right way. The problem is the ones that are willing to do whatever the hell they feel like it, nothing happens to them. They're coddled, they're protected. The bad apples are not eradicated. And what's the saying? Bad apples spoil the whole bunch. So yeah, we are skeptical of the Worcester Police Department because the city doesn't handle its bad cops who do bad things that are against sometimes illegal.
Perfect example.
So,
right?
So you can think about the department. I think about individual police officers, and I want to support those that are trying to do it the right way, and the ones that aren't doing the right way, who are protected and coddled and harbored inside city government. I want them to go away. You cannot like that position because you like bad cops. That's fine. You can like bad cops. It's America. You can have any stupid idea you want. However, I don't like bad cops.
It's the illogical argument that exists in all American politics, really, is that if you disagree with someone, you hate them. And if you disagree with someone, you're against them. And that's just completely untrue. And so, Henry, if you're still watching, if you did, or you just bailed, whatever, the fact is that you clearly haven't seen how much we've supported this chief publicly. And so if we hate police, why would we support the chief? That doesn't make any sense. But not only that, I've spoken about multiple officers who have done like the really good things, but when you bring up an officer who's done something bad, now you hate the police.
Now that doesn't make any sense. All the police.
If you say, I know you have one more area, but before you do that, there's one specific point that he had brought up right then. So he, now he wants to talk about this guy. But to see, that's the thing. So we're here to do press, right? So and this is Henry just hates a particular person. So that is, which is fine, but that's not my job because that's been publicly reported on by multiple people. I'm focused on municipal government. And by the way, we haven't just done shows on the police. We do shows on the education department. We've done shows on cable, and I don't see you there saying, in those cases, why aren't we going to report on those other things? And but what we're trying to say is we want Chief Saucier to succeed in multiple areas. One being the reform of issues that he's admitted need to be reformed. That's the thing that I keep missing. The reforms that he's instituted, and he said that at least on Tuesday. That was one thing that kind of got lost, was since I've become chief. So, which is an admission that there might have been some stuff before he was chief that was going on that wasn't great, right? But the other point that's essential is that we want him to be able to heal the bridge with the group of community members who feel harmed by the police department. That's it. No, but that's the thing. That person's not near us, Henry. You're just making that up. Like, that's just complete fabrication. I don't know him outside of seeing him at City Hall on Tuesdays. I don't have a friendship relationship with the guy. That's it. So what you're saying is just made up. Neither does Tom. We don't engage with that, and so it's just right. But that has nothing to do with us.
He's a civilian. He does not work for the government.
Your focus. The amazing part is your focus is on him doing that, but not officers who self-admitted those things. Right. So you won't focus on that. You'll focus on this person over here, which is fine. I mean, it's completely legitimate public conversation, which he's talked about. But it's not my job to cover. I'm covering municipal government. Why? Because he was interviewed by. It's because he was interviewed by Manning. That doesn't make him in the circle. It was a news story because of what happened in City Hall.
Yeah,
So
I've had
you're
meetings with
just
the
making
chief.
stuff up, and no reason to engage with you at all. But my point, so Tom could get back before I get distracted by this guy, was that there's a specific case that the chief brought up about the guy in the gurney that the officer was assaulting, and so. No, you're not saying that. You're using it to try to undermine our conversation about something else. So, in specifically, there's a different case that's pointed out in the DOJ report. The case of Ryan Joyal, who assaulted the man on Main Street and was suspended for 5 days. That is what is the fact. He was suspended for 5 days. That specifically is something that we're pointing out. The assault and battery is a crime that he wasn't charged with.
Right.
Right? If I slap you, Henry, for example, in public in front of a police officer, I'm going to jail. Immediately, do not stop. I'm getting cuffed and going. Or if you slap me, or if Tom slaps me, or if I slap Tom, or any of that kind of stuff. In this case, it was a person on a gurney that was strapped down, and there was a video of that who smacked of the officer smacking him, and that officer was suspended. This is public record, right? We're just pointing out standards of how people are treated, and this officer was not charged with a crime, even though he visibly committed a crime. The chief on Tuesday focused on a different case, which also involved an officer punching a person who was on a gurney, a different case entirely. And instead of talking about the video from that incident, which also questions why did the officer it doesn't matter what reason he slapped him, but no, that wasn't the one. The spit at one is the one I'm talking about right now. So the officer was spit at, and then the officer punched the guy like 6 or 7 times in the face, according to his own self-reported use of force report. And so in that case, Tom and I have never brought that case up, ever, not once.
Never.
The chief brought it up on Tuesday, and that case is justified because he spit on the officer directly in his face like 3 or 4 times. According to the other officers, he kept spitting on him, and then he eventually struck him. I don't have a problem with that. I would punch people in the face if they spit on me too. So I don't have an issue. I think it's a reasonable response, especially when he gave him multiple commands and he tried to hold his hands down. And the guy just kept spitting and spitting and spitting. Eventually, he punched him, and then they eventually put a mask on the guy. I'm talking about a different incident entirely, and that just goes to show you only use the issues that are resulted that help support your argument, not the ones that don't. And that's all we're saying. We do support good cops, but we're against bad cops. That's it. That's all it is.
That's it. And then the last we're something else. I'm sorry that we're paying attention to the facts.
We focus on facts. No one likes the facts in this city at all.
At all. Facts are insulting in this city. And then the third thing that the chief said was that the person that deals with the press, at the police department, got an email from someone who said that they were a student at Harvard, they were asking for an interview, and that they were an intern at the DOJ and edited the report. That's as much info as he has. I'm not sure. That sure seems out of the purview, something that was really important to City Council 5 seconds ago, outside the purview of the City of Worcester, how the Department of Justice manages its projects and how it uses staffing and interns. Two, I guess you might have an argument if, we're talking about an undergraduate student in the mathematics department. But, there's also the Harvard Law School, which has produced 2 presidents, 4 current Supreme Court justices, I think 8 total, like 50 governors, including like 6 of our own state, including Mitt Romney and Deval Patrick, as well as Dukakis went to Harvard Law. So I think that a graduate student studying law at Harvard is probably, my guess is that's who the DOJ is targeting for interns. Just a thought. But
right. I want to just point out real quick the the last statement, call it the same people. That's the point. Is the video that you're talking about? Manny does do that. Manny directly asks him those questions, and he then admitted those things on the episode that you're talking about. So I don't know what else you can ask people to do. So, anyways, sorry, just wanted to say that.
So and I just poignantly that meeting on Tuesday was 5 months to the day from the release of the report.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that intern thing real quick. So, again, we have is the chief. This is the second time I've heard this, right? The first time I heard this was Officer Duffy said that he heard interns worked on this report at the last time this came up at City Council, and then now the chief now confirms, I guess, that Sean Murtha received an email asking it, right? So specifically with Sean. So I am reaching out to Sean on Tuesday to kind of confirm this thing. It's a pretty big accusation by the chief of police because of a couple of reasons. One, these official patterns and practices reports are not supposed to be written by an intern. Now, I understand organizations use interns all the time, but on the staff roster for the Civil Rights Division at the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, there is no listed intern in the Civil Rights Division. So that's one. So that's a big question. There are multiple interns in the Criminal Complaints Division, right? So the criminal side has a bunch of interns. I looked them up. I couldn't find a girl. So I don't know where this person came from, but I'd like to identify them because the chief's made a statement that might be indicating the Department of Justice did something illegal. And so then I think the chief would then have to report that issue, right? Or something that at least is out of policy that an intern or someone who edited this document. But let's deal with that argument real quick, Tom. If they edited it, does that mean they wrote it? Could it be just that they edited it into a document?
So if I had an intern, I don't. But if I had an intern working with me, who's responsible for what's published on This Week in Worcester?
You are. Yeah,
exactly.
So that I'm with that. Again, so that's the same thing. So this thing that Henry is bringing up, that person's not on this station channel at any point. So then we're not responsible for that dude does. But that goes to your point, right? It's if that we let him on here and gave a platform to him, then yes, that would be an issue, right? But that's not the issue here, and so then it's not. And you can deal with that directly if you wanted to, right? The same thing with anything. If I write all my articles for you, right? If I used AI, which I don't because I'm against it, if I used AI to write my articles, who would be responsible for any mistakes that AI made?
That would be me. Because I'm
right, because you're the editor, right? So right. Not only that, though, how about this? And sometimes when I'm submitting my articles to Tom, right, there's a spelling error, right? So then I tell Tom, and then sometimes he fixes it, or sometimes I fix it. But who would be finally responsible for the spelling error? It would be Tom.
This guy,
right? Because he's publishing my story that I wrote, and so in that case, that's platforming somebody. He's giving me the place to write, and so then now he's responsible for whatever I say. And technically, by the way, if someone wanted to sue Tom for something that I said, they would be suing Tom.
Right.
Which, by the way, I'm gunning for that. I'm trying to make that happen as much as possible.
Thank you. So anybody that tries to sue me will be sorely. That's a long road. I got 2 peanuts and an M&M for you.
Wait a second. You have a copy of The Last of Us 2. I know that.
I do have a copy. It might be torrented,
but
anyway.
After that video
game. So that's the new low we've reached is. Well, we arrested a guy once, but interns. And I'm sorry, it wasn't 5 months to the day that the report was released. It was 29 months to the day since the announcement of the investigation. The report came out December 7th. So it has been 5 months since the report came out, and over a couple weeks. And in 5 months, now we've attacked the federal government. We've declared that everything in the report is fake, is lies, even though we have video of some of it.
Right. And that's a Worcester police officer that said that at the microphone inside City Council. Maybe that person's incident reports should be a little more scrutinized,
because they are obviously very willing to lie. And what there has not been, but no city official anywhere in city government, anywhere in the police department, has spent 1 second or given one word to anything in that report being true. Not 1 second. So we talked for 5 months about what's wrong with the report. So we're willing to talk about other people's problems. Basically, we're willing to talk about other people's problems, but we're not willing to admit that we actually have a problem ourselves. Are the things that did the DOJ screw up some stuff in the report? Sure. That doesn't make you miraculously good.
No, and so I think that in my opinion, having a report like this come out, just like the racial equity audit thing, right? If you No, it wasn't. Fred.
No, it wasn't.
You just like Fred. You just sometimes lying. You just make stuff up. That's not true. But again, it doesn't matter. But it just people just that's what happens right there. So the chief of police watches our show, and that's what the chief of police. Your public statement now has people thinking that. And so now I just want to point out that there's 2 former officers and former federal agents that were part of the 5-lawyer team that wrote this report. And so now the chief of police of Worcester has now denigrated the work that they did. And so, by the way, Republican, conservative, former cops that still are with the Department of Justice have been retained by the Trump administration. And the chief of police, your public statements are now leading to that. And so you should maybe you should think about walking that back. And very, very importantly, if criticizing a document in the city of Worcester, the new standard is now if an intern worked on that, well, Tom, don't you know that I happen to look up some of the great documents, including the city manager's 5-year plan, including the Vision Zero document, including the Mill Street redesign, the Chandler Street redesign, a ton of these construction documents all have interns working on them. And so if internship, that means all those things are bad, right?
No, because it's okay when they do it. It's just like how they treat the law. It's okay when they do it.
So if it's a Clark student, we're good. But if it's a Harvard student, we're bad. Maybe if it's a Holy Cross student or a WPI student, because they have a building issue with the city of Worcester, is that maybe how we do it? We're going to determine by which college they go to, what makes those interns. By the way, the city of Worcester has a bunch of interns. Does anybody realize that? So is all their work now not good? Internships where someone learns the job in place are the backbone of municipal government all over the country, because that's the only way often they recruit new talent is by doing internships. So if that's the case, the other thing though is there's multiple internal police documents and reporting that the chief cited on Tuesday that had police interns working on it. So does that undermine those documents, Tom? I mean, what's the standard there? And again, it felt planned. That story felt very, very planned and very, very delivered. And I wonder if there was some internal conversation, maybe even the chair of the public safety meeting was in on that conversation and kind of knew about it in advance. But that was something that was going to be discussed, but they didn't really work out the implications of it. So that means that every intern now should be reviewed, especially if they're working on internal police documents, right? We should definitely check that out and make sure that their work needs to be scrutinized heavily if the chief of police is going to do that, right?
Right. Here's Henry and Fred. Here's maybe something you can get behind. I don't know. It seems pretty common sense to me. I've now put in a petition with the city council. They don't meet on Tuesday, so it won't be heard until the following Tuesday, unless they find some scummy way to slither out of being heard. And what it says is that the city council hold a public forum, and because you have to use this stupid language, and request the city manager, request the police chief of police to appear and present what of the report is true. And it also asks that the city council ensure that this venue has the ability to show video to the assembled people, and we can have the chief of police break down the video of the cases in the report that we have video, so he can justify those people still being on the force. Because if we can talk shit, if we can run our mouths about the Department of Justice for 5 months, maybe we could talk about what's true in the report for 5 seconds. And guess what? This petition will not pass. It will either send it to committee to die, or they'll just vote against it because they're shameless.
Other thing I want to point out, Tom, I just want to double check and make sure, because I looked at it on Friday. So I just want to point out that they have not closed the investigation. So I just want to point that out, that there has been every other civil rights investigation in the country in relation to patterns and practices has been suspended officially, and an official statement has been released saying that they were suspended. This case, for some reason, Tom, is still not suspended. It's very interesting that didn't happen.
Because even the Trump administration doesn't want to be associated with killing this.
So that means that, to me, where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, another thing, too, the report was done by students, the people that are criticizing it. Several parts of the report, 7 of them, in fact, of the 19, praise the chief.
Yep.
7 of the 19 findings praise Chief Saucier, specifically by name, and say all the good things that he did. So are those baseless?
No, it's only the things that they don't like. It's only the things that they don't like.
It just makes no sense. So anyways, I think it's interesting. I will say this. I did get a chance to ask a question on Tuesday, and I recognize that the meeting was scheduled at 5 o'clock. The chief's testimony lasted almost an hour, which then the mayor promised 5 public hearings, Fred, 5, in relation to this report. And so far there's been 1. So we'll see about that. And the Public Safety Committee does, according to the mayor's office now maybe they want to change that. It needs to be 5 city council public hearings. So we'll see if that makes sense or not. But
what we don't want, though, is the sham that they did a few weeks ago, where they sit there and they don't react and they just let people speak. We want to have a discussion. We want to ask questions about why people that try to put people in jail for things that they didn't do are still on the police force.
So one of the things that I think is an important thing is that we get a copy of the Brady list. So I started the process to submit a public records request to the district attorney's office, which is a very opaque. It's a very opaque process. But I will tell you this. There is a state level request that I can do. So the Attorney General's office, Andrea Campbell, has released that list at the state level many times. So I'm going to ask the DA, Worcester County DA's office, Joe Early, if he will release it to me. I expect that I will be denied that access or delayed in several cases, and I'm going to simultaneously. So I'm telling you my moves in advance for those of you who are out there trying to stop me. I'm simultaneously submitting the public records request to the state at the same time, expecting to get it. Which so it's up to DA Early if he wants to look like he's hiding information that the Attorney General will give me, which is interesting. So that's the process. I'm also going to submit the same request to the Chief of Police and ask him for that list, which he has that list as an internal document, and would be interesting to see if he will release that. I think that would be a great step in transparency of saying of which names those are. So that we can talk about it. And it would be very interesting if some of those names were some of the names that have come up over the past few years of this investigation, because that would be something very specific to talk about. It's like, okay, why are they fighting against those names being on there? Now, let's just deal with that. But again, I think it's about a conversation, which I will give credit to the chief. This part where we're at right now has never happened. Like not in my lifetime. I mean, maybe in the 90s. I don't remember because I was too young.
So do you think it's really much different though? I mean, they're just being vocal about their ignoring that they just they have cognitive dissonance. In their mind, this department is one of the best in the country, and anybody that questions it is an enemy of the city or something.
Right, and I saw Worcester Politics 101 said that. The other day said that the Worcester Police Department is perfect and is the best in the country and has never ever done anything bad. I saw that statement the other day.
Did he really say that?
Yeah, he did. He wrote an entire article about that on.
See, that's a guy that loves bad cops.
Yeah, loves bad cops. So that's my thought process here, Tom, is that I do think it is a little different. At least that when I asked the question about whether or not the chief would be willing to allow the victims to process some of this information anonymously, and which is something I'm working on. There's several groups that I'm working on with victims who are coming forward with information, but they won't provide it directly to the police because they're afraid. So, and by the way, there's no interns working on this project, right? So, we're dealing with several women's groups who are producing this information. The reports will be anonymized as far as names, but what they're going to do is they're going to point out places and times. And the goal of that is to show up what the DOJ found, which was a pattern and practice, right? So, like, where was this happening neighborhood wise? What did the car look like? Yada, yada, yada. That kind of information, which the chief says he's never been given. But he did say to me, as I was walking away from the podium, that he would be willing to take that information. So to me, I think you would want, if Steve Sargent said that it never even happened. Gary Jemmy said it never even happened. So at least he acknowledged that if there is information, he'll look at it. That's different. Again, so that's my basis for hope, is that he said he would at least listen. And so again, and by the way, is this, I don't know if we lost our buddy who said we hate people. Isn't this me giving him credit? Isn't this me? So yeah, no, I agree with you, Fred, that it would definitely have to come from the city manager's office, which I think would probably push back. But anyways, we know that, Fred, you're not telling us new information. We told you this before you said it.
And this other thing that they've been doing. You can see, like, the city manager when the police chief was at city council, you could see the city manager kind of with looks and gestures trying to guide the police chief on what he could and couldn't say because of personnel matters. That's nothing legal. That is the city manager staking out barriers of what he wants released. Yeah. Because if you think back, when a man that worked for the Worcester Police Department who terrorized his neighborhood for years and nobody did anything about it. When he overdosed on cocaine, the department announced when he was fired. So did the laws change? They didn't. They're lying when they say that they can't release that information. They don't. Now, what they shouldn't do is go into the circumstances of why someone no longer works for the police department.
Sure.
But to say that they can't say who does or doesn't work there is nonsense. They already tell us by releasing the salaries every year. If you could compare year to year who's on the salary list, you can know who's there or not. There's no reason why they couldn't say it otherwise. No reason.
But the expectation is that so I understand what you're saying. The expectation is that they would want us to do the work, and other municipalities provide that information. I have to give credit. You wrote a story about the Auburn officer who was caught in a really terrible case. It was arrested for something just really reprehensible. Innocent until proven guilty, but man, that's a tough situation. The Auburn police already released multiple statements condemning the guy. I mean, like up and down, captains, chiefs, former retired people. It's all over the place. How many people? And if you go onto Facebook, it gets even worse. It's crazy on the town of Auburn police page. So now when you say that, right, people say, when we talk about this, they're saying, are you saying the same thing about all the officers in the Worcester Police Department? No. But I would say that I've never seen that in the WPD. When the WPD has an officer get in trouble, there's a closing of the ranks and it becomes very insular and you can't hear anything. Yep. Including it's almost me and you being blocked from all the pages. We're not even allowed to engage in those conversations because there's no real dialogue. And so that really shows you where they're at.
And they close ranks so hard in the face of one of their own, committing crimes or violating policy. You just have to wonder, like, is there a secret swearing in process? Is there a sword? Did somebody's finger get pricked? Did they say a bunch of stuff in Italian? That's what it's like, the closing of ranks.
So, by the way, Tom, I will tell you this. Recently, there's a Supreme Court case. We've talked about this a little bit in relation to public officials and their official Facebook pages, right? Even if they happen to be union or non. So this is very interesting, but there's been several cases developing in the Fifth Circuit and the Seventh Circuit after the Supreme Court decided last year that a public official who has a Facebook page and no other social media account, that becomes their official page, and it's basically public record. And so you can't block a member of the public from that page unless the person, is a credible threat of violence or has threatened you in some way. So currently, you and I are blocked from all the police union pages, but it may be that is illegal, which is exciting because I would love to be able to have these conversations directly with the officers and give them an opportunity to defend themselves in the cases that we're talking about. I also, again, I want to say this. I was speaking with a lieutenant the other day that I have known since I was 16 years old. And I can't say his name because he's given me information in the past. But I want to say this, that I thought he gave a very credible statement to me that I've heard from a lot of people, and you have as well, Tom, that the individuals involved, they want them off the force. And I think that the chief of police has also said that he wants the power to be able to fire people, but because of the civil service rules and the union rules, they can't. And so there's that push and pull. And I think that if we say that we would like people to have the tools available to create the best possible scenario, which I think the chief is advocating for, how does that make us anti-police? We're asking to give him better tools. And so I hope people start to actually listen to the difference and what Tom and I have been saying, which is not anti-police. It's pro-police, and it's pro-specifically a police force that can be trusted and can lead to the healing of the divides between the community, which, by the way, we can't depend on the state, and we definitely can't depend on the federal government to do those things. We're really on our own here, and so we're responsible to try to build healing and bridge those divides here at this level. And so I'm just trying to help the chief get those things, because I don't know that the political will exists. Maybe, Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the political will exists
to do anything.
Yeah.
And there's a range of things council could do, even with civil service.
Yeah.
The first thing they should do is create a system anywhere in federal and city government where there's a process to approve internal investigators. Okay. And then once you have, some sort of accreditation process for internal investigators, including the ability to issue oaths and affirmations. So you see, because currently right now, if anybody in city government, I think, certainly a police officer, lies to an internal investigator, the penalty is nothing. There is no penalty. They can lie. They're specifically purposefully enabled to be able to lie. So you create that accreditation process or that approval process, and then you pass again, both by ordinance, which makes them laws, and then you pass an ordinance that says that anyone that knowingly provides false information to an internal investigation in the course of an internal investigation is immediately terminated from city government. Right. Immediately terminated. Now, that would probably run. What I don't know is if that could be in effect immediately. I think it could, because as the city council finally asserted this year, it is an independent body, and so it isn't party to whatever contracts the city government has, because it's not part of city government, is its own entity. It's not party to the contracts, especially collective bargaining agreements that the city might sign, and the law would supersede the agreements in that contract. But let's say I have that wrong. What it would do would when these contracts expire, it would take the issue right off the table. There's nothing to negotiate. It's against the law. They could do that tomorrow. They won't.
And also, so this is something you and I have talked about a lot. There really is no, as far as public statements and internal conversation, there really is no process citywide, not just in the police department, but citywide, for there to be accountability for honesty, right? So basically any city official can go sit at the little table, right, and make any statement Doesn't matter if they could be the city attorney, they could be the city manager, any of the city councilors, any person, and they could just blatantly, bold-faced lie, and there's nothing that can be done about it because the city charter has zero provisions for honesty, and it has no accountability. You're not under oath when you go to those things.
Nope.
And by the way, we have the same, so people don't think I'm just going after the city. No one who approaches the public, like if the person in the public goes to the podium, they can just make shit up. And people do all the time. There's plenty of times when I've been sitting there and people go up and just lie, including, some public, very active activists just making stuff up, and there's no way to hold them accountable. So this is not just, again, this is an overall approach. If you look at the scope of our work, really analyzing the entire city government, we're talking about creating an ethical exchange between the public and the municipality, and you need, for that to work, some accountability structure that allows for, if someone lies, there to be a consequence for that, right? So if you lie, there's a consequence. And I want to say this, that for us as media persons, right, we could be sued for anything that we say that we intentionally fabricate, right? So we could be sued, right, for that. And so specifically, on top of that, I could be sued in my personal capacity, but let's say I wrote something that I knew to be a lie and Tom published it knowing it to be a lie, then Tom could be sued and this week, yada, yada, yada. So like there is an accountability structure for us, which is why we're so careful. Tom and I haven't published things which we've heard, and some crazy stuff that we've heard. In fact, there's some stuff that's been brought to me that's anti-police, I guess you would say, that we have not published because we couldn't confirm it, right? And so isn't that because, by the way, and some of it's like super juicy, ridiculous stories, and they were so convenient and so poorly timed that Tom and I immediately had red flags up, like, hey, I don't know if this is right, but here's what I heard. Is this work or not? And we went and looked for a second source, and in several cases we couldn't get the sources. And so when you don't have a second source, you really shouldn't publish it. Which, of course, I think everybody knows that deep down inside, that should be the standard how we approach things. But not everybody in the city does that. I would go and have no problem saying out loud that the Telegram and Gazette has run with stuff that wasn't true, and that
I wrote about one of those things extensively.
Yeah. Yeah, and we found that it was false. And the Telegrams that never responded to anything, never took anything down, never removed it. Articles are still up on their website that you can find that have just absolute bold-faced lies in it. That never happened. Were completely 100% fabricated. And yet there's no accountability there. So I would just push back on that, but and say we're not just saying it about the police. The police are very prominent because they're the police, but we're also saying this in the case of, like, I don't know, and I don't want to but only because I like him. But the guy who does the parks, he's really cool. I had a good conversation with him about Elm Park the other day. If he got up there and made up some story about John Sterling, right? I think it's John something. If he got up and lied about a park, I also want him to be held accountable, right? Speaking of which, by the way, if anybody wants to know about Elm Park stuff, I have all kinds of new facts about Elm Park, the park that's right outside in fact, that window right there, if you take a right, Elm Park is to the right. My office is right next to Elm Park. And so there's some cool stuff about the city parks that I find interesting. I think we have beautiful parks. I noticed that there's been some more active civil engagement. Why would the TNG ever respond? Exactly, Freddie. Why wouldn't they respond to lies that they published? And then were proven 100% to be lies. In fact, they lost lawsuits. It's not even like just a little bit. They've been sued and lost. But that's a whole other thing. The city too. That's, again, not just police stuff, but people think we're always talking about that. There's a pothole lawsuit that the city lost in relation to someone whose car got destroyed. The city public works department had issued something that wasn't true, and they lost a lawsuit because of it. So it's not just police. We're talking about government in general being honest and being accountable. That's it. And so it just happens to be that the police is often the juiciest thing to talk about. But if you look at the overall approach is honesty in government. It should be honest. It should be true. It should be based in reality and facts, and not whatever you feel like that day. Tom, and you know what's happening right now? Tom is searching.
No, I had it queued up. Let's just watch. This is from the what can only be described, which I mean ought to be described as the gang beatdown on Main Street. This was part of. This is one of the people charged in the protests in 2020 on Main Street. And let me not screw this up. One second. My apologies. I will have this momentarily. And I just want you to. So, you'll see what happens. Then I'll tell you the rest, because this video goes on for 10 minutes, 11 minutes and 11 seconds actually, and the arrest happens in the first 20 seconds of the video. This is an arrestable offense to the Worcester Police Department. As soon as I figure out what the hell I'm doing here. Here we go. Yes.
While Tom's working on this, just so everybody knows, Joe Hendry has made an appearance at WrestleMania.
Oh, that's not playing. I'm sorry. I thought it was playing. It must be here. Okay, here we go. See that? Yeah.
Yep.
Bitch ass nigga. What? No, what's up? No, what's nothing. Yo. What's nothing?
What crime did he commit?
He swore at the officer.
That's a crime, and it's not a crime anywhere else in the United States, but it's apparently a crime in Worcester, Massachusetts. Now, notice, if you can see the bottom of the screen, this video goes on for 11 minutes. Wait for the dog barking in his face. Now, the screen stays dark for the rest of the 11 minutes. But all you can hear is police stuff. Police talking to each other. Lots of paintballs being fired indiscriminately. But all you hear is the police. So any common sense, the preponderance of evidence, let's say, would say that a police officer picked up his phone. Says all you hear is police. The internal investigation found that they could not. The video doesn't show who picked up the phone, and it could have been somebody just following the police around who stole the phone. And therefore, nothing about that, no violations of policy. Ordering somebody to get in their car and leave, them doing it, and then you yank them back out of the car, that's perfectly okay. That's a crime in Massachusetts to do what you're told, apparently, or in Worcester. And what else is what else happened on that wonderful day? Many times is there's video of police officers ripping phones out of people's hands, throwing them on the ground, and stomping on them. Is that a crime for anybody else on Earth in the United States? I guess that doesn't make sense. Is that a crime for anybody else in the right? But not for Worcester police officers, because they can do whatever they want, and the Bureau of Professional Acquittals will cover it up.
Yeah. So
and that's what it is. And let's be very clear about what it is that happens there. It is crime being covered up.
And by the way, let's say this again. It just when the snowstorm happened on my birthday, April 12th, which was followed, by the way, 7 days later by 85-degree day on Saturday. I don't know if everybody got outside to have some fun. But there was a big argument online that the city wasn't prepared, blah 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 blah. It's April 12th. I don't know necessarily that any city
internal documents. It's because it's in the filing of the lawsuit, which the city is going to pay through the nose for. That internal documents say they have no training for this. They weren't prepared. The whole basically, I'm summarizing. They don't say this. Basically, the whole operation was a disaster.
Sure. So my point about the snowstorm is this. On the day of, there were people that were told to do certain things on that day. And this is something we've heard a bunch in Worcester for 25 years. Usually contractors asked to do a certain thing, and because they're in disputes with the city over payments, not doing those things, right? But there are certain roles in that's not a crime necessarily, but it is a breach of contract, right, Tom? Like a breach of contract. I say I'm going to pay you to do this, you don't do it. There's a breach of contract. Okay. A crime occurs right when there's a actual breaking of the law, and we're not just talking about the police here. There are multiple other instances where people are breaking the law and getting away with it. So let me talk about one specifically that has nothing to do with the police, but it's been going on for a long time. I will try to leave names out, but the fact is that there is a place on Main Street in Worcester that is well known, that is an open front for drugs. It has been an open front for drugs for 30 years. I can't say the name because maybe that person might actually kill me. But I just want to say out loud that there is open committed crimes. Drugs are being sold. People have been beat up. There's a lot of stuff down there that goes on. And the chiefs of police now, 3 in a row, have argued that they don't have the resources to deal with an operation of that size. And they have not really gone after that. And they've asked for resources. And normally that kind of case, when you have interstate trafficking of drugs and guns, there's federal cooperation agreements and state cooperation agreements and yada, 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 yada. But they kind of have openly operated. And it has happened in many cities across the nation where people do commit crimes and they get away with it all the time. That should never happen. Why can't we ask for that? Not just not to happen with but not to ever happen with our police. We just want accountability to be fair. And again, I believe truly that we're headed in a good direction. I do. I was disappointed by Tuesday. Because it seems so out of character for what happened before that. But hey, I'm still hopeful, and I don't. Unlike how people hold me accountable for years for the stuff that I've done, I kind of try to move forward from things, and so I'm going to move forward with this, hopeful that if we continue to advocate for it, it'll lead to positive results. And again, I would say I agree with this statement. I've said it many times. The vast, vast, vast majority of the Worcester Police Department are good cops, and I want them to be celebrated for what they do and not for what has happened. Which we're only pointing out. We have video, we have audio, we have documents of things that have happened, and the city's paying out these lawsuits. I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that either.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. So, for the 9 years of the reign of former Chief Sergeant, how many? I mean, was there still there? Some of these lawsuits are still ongoing. The Main Street, the protest beatdown. What else is out there? There's some other stuff out there too. Oh, the Cosenza thing isn't finished. We'll talk about that in a second. The pastor is still out there. That was under the reign of the former tyrant that was a chief of police. But yet, the Bureau of Professional Acquittals, how many times in the 9 years the chief sergeant was chief, how many times did they find an officer responsible for the unreasonable use of force? How many? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
0. 0. Let's look at another example.
That was not a setup,
according to the Worcester Police Department, this is not the unreasonable use of force. We'll play the relevant part here. This is outside the beer garden in 2019. It highlights the person we're talking about so you can see it well. See that person? That's a man called Chris Ayala Melendez. He talks to an officer, and he's just attacked by a thug from behind for no reason, who then throws him into his dog, who the dog then attacks him. That's not unreasonable force, according to Worcester Police Department. Here's a same video, just zoomed in a little bit, so you can see he speaks to an officer. The officer he talks to doesn't budge when he's grabbed, because I'd imagine he's not expecting it. And then they do what they do. They take him to jail. Again, see the bald-headed guy is turning his head. That man told the internal investigation that he gave Mr. Ayala Melendez 3 separate commands in the less than 3 seconds that he's looking at him.
Yeah.
Openly lied to the investigator. Openly
Can you
lied.
go back?
And that's not the worst part. That's not the worst part. That same officer then charged that man who did nothing wrong. He had the audacity to walk up and ask a question to a police officer. He charged that man with assault on a police officer that never happened and a whole bunch of other stuff that he never did. He tried to put that man in prison for crimes he did not commit. And the only reason why we know this is because he didn't know that the surveillance video had caught his bullshit on camera. And guess what? That man can't arrest you today because he is still a Worcester police officer. And that is not unreasonable force to the Worcester Police Department.
By the way, it's interesting to see all your YouTube selections that are up there. You're like,
next. Oh, well, whatever.
It's a mixed bag, Tom.
Yeah, showing me nonsense. And that's perfectly fine to the Worcester Police Department, trying to put people in jail for crimes they didn't commit. They first found him responsible for, just to be clear, they found him responsible for a policy error with the dog. And then months later, Chief Sergeant went back in to reopen the file so he could insert a report violation. Months later, after we'd all seen the video, he was, I can imagine begrudgingly had to go in and admit, well, was that unreasonable force? So you can ask a police officer a question in Worcester, and if you're beat up by another cop, that is perfectly fine to the Worcester Police Department.
And I just, again, the chief, this report was in this case was in the DOJ report. It was mentioned specifically, and the chief.
Yep, it's all a lie though.
No, but the chief, just went past that report and didn't acknowledge it. So in his critique of the report, he ignored this case, which we have a video, and we have evidence, and we have a lawsuit that has been paid. And
yes.
So like. This is not an ongoing case. This person has been paid, and so why did the city pay if that video that we saw doesn't indicate that the reports that we have? But not only that, the officer with the dog that handled the dog was taken off the dog training unit for a period of time, which is another thing that the chief admitted in public, and he's since returned to that unit. So there was definitely a time where you saw some kind of consequence. So if there was, why did that officer be removed? Why was he removed? We don't have access to that report. But what was the internal reason for his removal from the dog, unit? Was it because of this case? We don't know for sure. Those are the kind of things that would be good public conversations to have. Like, why did he make that decision? Why does the report say that he was facing him when he clearly wasn't? I mean, that's just the start of it. Like, there was a bunch of other things. Why does he say he gave him all those commands when he clearly doesn't? Like, what did his memory go bad? Like, why does an officer who was in the top of the screen in another takedown of a different person say that he saw the whole thing as the other officer saw?
Also true. Because why not? Why not lie? There's no consequence for it.
Yeah, so that's the issue, and so I don't know that. And again, by saying this, that makes us hate the police by asking these questions that are very, very reasonable. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And again, I know Chief Saucier. He tells me he watches the show, and he brings up things. One thing. Oh, that's good. Good time for public correction. I think somewhere I wrote or I said on the show 6 deputy chiefs. And the chief reminded me there's only 4. There's 4 people that are deputy chiefs. There's 4 positions. And, I don't know how they structured it or they changed it over time, but that's what he says, that he has 4 deputy chiefs. So let me issue that public correction. By the way, that's engagement with with civilian people. Me, I'm a civilian, and the chief of police telling me something that I said wasn't right. So there you go. I gave issue an on-air correction, which is that's how you're supposed to do it, right?
That is how you're supposed to do it. Let's
let's
watch one more.
You want them to issue
Here's also perfectly legitimate use of force by the Worcester Police Department, according to the Bureau of Professional Acquittals. I got 97 windows open. I apologize for taking forever. Here we go. From Mass Live. There's.
Who are you? Who are you? Why don't you go inside? You have nothing involved. Go
Oh,
inside.
that's my daughter. So
Okay.
yeah, I do have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
You know,
you don't have
this has nothing to do with you.
How's that? Kyrie, don't come tell me what Rachel.
Now, I pause it right here to say, this officer could have chosen to get in his vehicle and drive away.
Yes.
Right here. Instead,
You done yelling? You done yelling?
Are you done yelling? Acting like a big shot?
We're all set here. You can go inside.
No, you go on.
You're not going to tell me what to do. You can go inside. You're about to be arrested for disturbing the peace.
Here, Tyron. Let's get him. Look at him. Look at this guy. Look at him.
so that's, I mean, the rest of it is horrific. The guy basically beats the tar out of a pastor in his own church in front of his kid.
Hey! What are you doing?
Hey, what are you doing? Oh, you're in a trouble!
What happened here is
Tell me what crime he committed. Was it asking
So
for
he
a
didn't-
supervisor? What crime did that man commit? Asking for a supervisor is apparently a crime in Worcester.
he didn't commit a crime. But what's happening right here is he's currently being I don't know if it's I think it's 104 when the officer tases him in the back. He
Somebody record this!
That is a violation, at least, of all of the training that this officer has ever received.
Yep.
The man is in a prone position. He does not have backup yet. So the other officers haven't come to help him secure him yet. And he has decided on his own to tase him with a drive stun. So, you can shoot the little leads, or you can take the taser and actually jam it in and drive it. And according to his own report, self-reported, he does it multiple times while the pastor is on the floor. A man almost 60 years old at the time, who was clearly he was resolved. There wasn't an issue here. He wasn't going to take down the officer. He's not moving his arms around. Now he does have his arms like this, and his head is on his arms. And the officer said that he was resisting being cuffed. So let's talk about what the chief of police has said, Tom, is that there's a new approach is based on a reasonable officer's response to things. Is that a reasonable response? But is the pastor's response reasonable? Is it reasonable to go like this when you're being
in the back?
And you had just been chased through the church? It's got to be embarrassing. Family's there. It's a
kids, whatever. We don't care about
it's a
kids.
tough thing. So the pastor's probably thinking in his mind, I can't fight back here because I'm going to get in trouble. And he's trying to give up. It is clearly a person. To me, all I see is when he laid down that he gave up. And so there needs to be now, what happens next? Is there a reasonable approach by the official in this situation? And as we see clearly, no. It continues, and I'm glad that you turned it off because it actually manages to be worse from that point forward.
Did it not play the audio? Did you not hear the audio?
Oh, no, I heard the audio. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everyone understood. All he did was
he
tell
called
an
him a
officer.
tyrant.
First he declined to comply with the officer's illegal command because he's got no right to tell him to go back inside. He's standing on a public sidewalk. He's standing across the street from the issue that the police are dealing with, which happens to deal with his daughter. And as you see, the car that drives away is his daughter. She told the police, go away, because they had no right to detain her, and they knew it. So when she drove away, they let her.
Yeah, so the incident was over.
Right.
So now the officer, all the investigatory rights, the officer has none. So the officer says clearly, you're about to be arrested for disturbing the peace. Okay. So now disturbing the peace is a specific code. And the pastor is well within his rights, by the way, to stand on the sidewalk and speak to a public official, including call him a tyrant. In fact, Tom, as we've seen in the city council
You can call him
chamber,
anything you want.
you can swear, cuss, call names, do all kinds of things to public officials, and there's nothing they can do about it. We live in a country where our First Amendment rights are protected. Free speech, right? We're supposed to allow free speech. Now, can you interfere in an investigation? No, but the investigation, as you just pointed out, was over. It was officially over when they let her car go. Now, they might have paperwork to continue, but the officer was going to his car
and turned around
and said to him, "Are you done yelling now?" So the officer re-engaged the situation.
Yep.
And this officer has not been disciplined. This officer is still on the force. This is what we're trying to say.
Free to beat you up for no reason, as he pleases.
That behavior is so egregious. It's not a training defect. So the chief has pointed out this idea of training defects, and I think that's legitimate in some cases. This is not a training defect. He was pissed off. Let's be reasonable about this. He was pissed off at the guy, and as an officer, you have to sublimate those emotions. You can't allow your emotions to get a hold of you. He got angry, and he engaged in a conversation, and he made it worse, and then he turned it into. By the way, the other person tried to get out of his way. As you saw, he realized the officer was going at him and tried to go across the way. And he as the report says, that person also sued the police department for injuries that he received from falling onto the cement. So you have this, and by the way, the city's negotiating currently a settlement. And as I understand, the lawyers for the two men and the church and the other people who sued for trauma, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with that case. The lawyers have been very circumspect, but they continue to push back in public versus some other lawyers we've seen who haven't done that, where the police will criticize that case and the lawyers come right out and say, well, here's the thing, and the video comes back. And so there's really just no reasonable way to say that was handled good by the police officer. It just wasn't, and the city won't admit it. In fact, City Manager Batista, in an executive session, according to multiple sources, told the city councilors that he thinks the officers did the right thing. Now, City Manager Batista hasn't answered that question, and Tom Matthews, the official media guy over there, has said that they have no comment and they didn't say that. But I'm just telling you where it goes to is that there's actually people who think that what happened in that video was reasonable.
I believe that's actually the Cosenza case that he said that about. Maybe it was both. And lastly, let's talk about Nat. So you've seen all this. We're talking about interns at the Department of Justice and not any of these videos.
Yep.
That's the city's plan, is talk about the Department of Justice. Very patriotic, by the way, to just slam the federal government. Make sure you stand for the magic song when they wave the magic cycloth at the beginning of every meeting, and then you beat the crap out of the federal government. But anyway, in the Nat Cosenza case. Now, Nat Cosenza went to prison for 16 years, and he was released based on an initiative that came out of the state Supreme Court, a years-long study about the reliability of witness testimony. But then he sued the city. Now, when he filed that lawsuit, they opened a BOPS investigation to go back and look at what had happened 16 years plus earlier. And of course, the trend is real. The Bureau of Professional Acquittals decided that these two officers, Sergeant Kerry Hazelhurst and Sergeant John Doherty, you may know John Doherty's number. He's now retired to collect a pension for the rest of his life, stealing from good cops. He was one of the interrogators in the case a decade earlier that the city settled for $2.1 million, where him and another officer bullied a teenager into confessing to a murder when there was no homicide. She spent, I think it was nearly 2 years in jail awaiting trial. Once the video of the confession came out, once it got in front of the judge, the case was immediately over. And the city of Worcester, in all its glory, it actually tried, one of the most stunning things you'll ever see, it actually tried to get the court to name her attorney in the suit to compensate her, saying he didn't get her out of jail fast enough. This would happen in real life. So, so that's what Bob's did the
By the
investigation
way,
when the lawsuit was filed. Go ahead.
this is the kind of when you look at the our country, right, and this you hear this a lot right now with like some of the local protests and the national government, this idea of the rule of law, rule of law, rule of law. These are the kind of things that are being argued by municipalities against its own people. Right. This is what we're trying to point out there. This is nowhere is there a constitutional document that anybody says, right, that this is how we want to approach things. So we're gonna try to nitpick. We're gonna try to like flip things, and we're gonna try to like, we're gonna swerve over here and move over there. Right. On Saturday night, for example, our federal government told the Supreme Court that they were not actually going to send anybody on planes anywhere. And the Supreme Court didn't believe the federal government and froze them from doing that under the Aliens Act, right? And they froze the buses. And it turns out there's now a video now. You can go see this lovely video of buses from ICE going to an airport in Texas and then having to turn back around because the Supreme Court gave this order. And, and then we literally have attorneys for government saying dishonest things. Now, this has happened. I don't want to blame it just on Republicans because Democrats have done the same thing. But we don't want the city of Worcester representing us, right? Because remember, when they're representing us in these lawsuits, they're representing the people of Worcester, the city of Worcester, the government that we supposedly voted for. And their representation through their own official attorneys is, we're going to try to get this girl's lawyer to pay for this. That's the move. That's the move. There's a team of people who got together and said, I know what we're going to do. And that was their official plan of action. What we're saying is that is not good enough to be leaders for our city. That is not good enough.
The opposite of leadership. And if you read, I forget the judge's name now. He's now whatever they call the judge is like retired, but he still hears some cases. The primary federal judge most of our lives until he retired recently. His name's eluding me. But the decision in their motion to include the person who was bullied into a confession for a thing that wasn't a homicide, the decision by the Judge Hillman is hysterical. I mean, just destroys the city for how stupid it really is. So anyway, Bob does this.
Go ahead. I was going to attach something to it, is that at the same time as this case was going on, there was 3 separate lawsuits that the Telegram and Gazette and Mass Live filed for access to public records. At the same time, completely. Let's get to that in a second, because I got a take on that. Let's get to that. In a second. So Bob, the lawsuit's filed. Bob does an investigation. Guess who? Guess that now the people they're investigating, Doherty and Hazelhurst. Doherty, as I said, involved in the patent plainly illegal interrogation of a teenager. Guess who writes that report for Bob's? His name was, he's now retired too, like another scumbag that's collecting a pension for the rest of his life, stealing from good cops. Sergeant Kevin Paggio, who wrote that report, he was the co-defendant with Doherty in the interrogation case. It was Doherty and Paggio who conducted that bullying scumbag investigation. And the integrity of the Worcester Police Department is so high that not only was his former partner, his former co-defendant, that's who wrote the Bob's report. So you can take that thing and throw it in the trash. It is no word of it is credible. No word. And if I'm to get in trouble, can I have like my mom investigate? Is that what we're doing now? Right. So, and then if you need another reference point to get your idea of what kind of ethical things we're talking about here, just a couple of weeks ago, Mo Bergman recused himself from a vote on LLCs because he owns an LLC. So his LLC has nothing to do with the order in case, but because he owns an LLC, he recused himself from an order related to LLCs. Candy Merrill Carlson recused herself from a order related to Carlson drive. I think it's or road, one of the ones, which is named after one of Candy's relatives, and she owns property there. But the order had nothing to do with her property, but she still recused herself from being involved in that vote. And all she did was walk out of the hallway, step out of the hallway, and not be involved in it. In this case, a person who was a former co-defendant of the person being investigated and the former partner of the person being investigated, they cannot possibly be expected in that situation. To me, now this again, you and I have gone back and forth on this. In this case, they put that person in the worst. There's no way he could ever find against his partner and his former co-defendant in another lawsuit. It's impossible to ask him to do that. So what we're saying is, in this case, you wouldn't have him do that. You would have an independent fact finder do that. And if that independent fact finder led to the same exact conclusion, it would be much less egregious than what we're saying right now. Because
but Gary Jim was chief at that time, and that he was a cult of personality on 1,000. And how? So I just want to make this point. How did Paggio go from co-defendant in a wrongful in an illegal interrogation to bops? Well, soon after that confession video was thrown out because they did a whole bunch of things that are illegal. Gary Jim, in all his glory, after going on Twitter and criticizing the judge in public, he then promoted Paggio to investigate, to conspire to enable more cops to do more bad things, because Gary Jim was a true leader. And getting to your point, the city council at the time tolerated it.
Yeah, the three lawsuits now. So now we by the way, the three lawsuits that were filed, 2 by the Telegram and Gazette and 1 by Mass Live at the time, were related to records requests. By the way, only one of them was involving this case. Only one of them. The other ones were different things that the city has to provide to the public, and the city was not providing them to the public. Now, public records has definitely gotten better. I want to give credit to the law department. Tom and I have dealt with a couple people over there that have changed to that approach. Not completely great, but definitely way better than back then. But anyways,
well, I mean, it's wildly understaffed intentionally. So
super. They don't have enough people, and so it is hard in the public records department. However, there's 3 lawsuits, and the approach that the city took was, "F you, sue us, and then maybe we'll deal with it." And they so actually well, Judge Hillman, in this case, in the federal version of the lawsuit, directed the city to, not Judge Hillman, I'm sorry, Harrison.
It was a state case. Yep.
State case. Judge Harrison, in that case, directed the city, in his capacity as a judge, to give the documents to the Telegram and Gazette and any other interested media party. That was the order at the time, right? And so then Mass Live asked for their lawsuit to be combined with the Telegram and Gazette, and the city moved to dismiss the lawsuit. Right? Remember this? They moved to dismiss the lowsuit and say that you can't do that. They're different. The disparate issues was the term that was used at the time, and of course they lost. And they had to release the records and give all the stuff eventually, but they ended up having to pay the legal fees for the Telegram and Gazette and for Mass Live, which accumulated a ton of money. It was like almost $600,000.
I don't know if it was from Mass. I don't think it was Mass Live. I think it was just a Telegram. But either way, and that lawsuit, this was just a few years ago. That lawsuit was remarkably similar to a previous lawsuit a decade earlier. Remarkably, so basically the same case, which the Telegram also won that case.
Yeah,
and so they hired outside counsel, of course, to defend this case. And when it was decided, the judge the trial judge said that the city, its representation, made bad faith arguments because there was no argument to make, because there was no case. There was nothing to defend. They were always going to lose, and they knew it. So what to take away from this is that Ed Augustus stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from taxpayers to prevent taxpayers in the public from accessing records that are public. And they want to name a street after this scumbag.
But I know we got to move on because we're running out of time. But
so
man,
I just want to make a last point about the Cosenza case. So they do this investigation when the lawsuit's announced. The lawsuit went to trial. Okay, so this lasted forever. This is 2 or 3 years after BOPS does its investigation. Now, trial, they do this thing called discovery, where evidence is brought forth because everybody has access to the evidence before the trial, right? Who do you think in city government is responsible to now, with all this evidence from trial, because Doherty is retired, Hazelhurst still has a job somehow, and who's responsible to look at all this evidence revealed at trial and look at the BOPS report and figure out what the facts are to understand, because this is what, and I want you to listen very clearly to this, what the civil jury found was that Hazelhurst manufactured and fabricated evidence, and Doherty conspired with him to do so. That's what the civil jury found. Now, maybe
Ted, it was a policy decision by Ed Augustus.
Yes.
The city attorney works at the works for the city manager.
Yes. Well, she did work for the city manager. Then she went to a private firm, and that's who they hired to do this.
Yeah.
And so, right. So BOPS, years prior, does an investigation. Then we have a trial. So who in city government is looking at all the stuff that was revealed at trial to try and determine if the jury was right, and we actually have a Worcester police detective who is willing to manufacture and fabricate evidence to put you and your children or your other loved ones in prison for a crime you did not commit. Who is responsible to make that determination? Do you know, John?
Well, it should be the Public Safety Committee. Should be the BOPS. It should be a lot of different groups should be involved.
If it's not back to BOPS, we know how that turns out. That's the official cover-up division of the Worcester Police Department. But the answer is no one, because they don't care. They do not care if they have a Worcester police officer who's willing to fabricate and manipulate evidence to put you in prison for things that you didn't do. They don't care at all. And when Ed Augustus was stealing, and this is the last point I want to make about this. When Ed Augustus was stealing your money to deny you information that is yours by law, the city council tolerated it. They've tolerated all of this stuff. And they'll say that's not our purview to tell Ed what he can and can't do. Yes, it is. You say, stop it now, or we'll get somebody who will stop it now. But they didn't do that. So that is an endorsement of stealing your money to prevent information that is yours being accessed by you. That's the city we live in. And there's no signs it's going to change.
Well, no, and I mean, so, and of course, I'm getting a lot of messages right now about from all. So let me for a second make the same argument, not a police related argument. Ed Augustus made a public statement the other day that investors are specifically housing related investors are pulling back their investments because of the way the market is going. That's currently being done right now, and he's doing that from his capacity as the housing person for the czar or whatever for Governor Healy, right? So if you remember, he went from city manager to the dean at Dean College, and then from dean at Dean College to this job in housing. We just had one of the firms, Madison Properties, who there are numerous public statements with Ed Augustus praising the investments of Madison Properties into the city of Worcester, and their now he's saying that their lack of commitment to the properties that they were invested in is because of the way that the federal government stuff is happening in the marketplace. So I want to say this. This kind of prevarication, this kind of switch, we're going to move, we're going to shift it over here, we're going to do that. That is at its root just dishonesty in government. And so the same thing, we're going to point you over here, we're going to try to distract you here, we're going to say it this way, we're going to do it that way, is permeated many public officials, not just in Worcester, but beyond, all over the country. This is normal standard practice, is we didn't do anything wrong, we were just doing our jobs, that we were told to do that. That was the policy at the time. We were only doing what was reasonable. Everybody else did it like that. And so it goes back to the classic argument of being a child. I was arrested when I was a child for doing mailbox baseball, which, if any of the older folks in the chat remember this, you hang out the side of the door of a car and you hit mailboxes with a baseball bat. I did that when I was a teenager. I'm admitting that to you now. That is on my record as a juvenile. And at the time when I was caught, I was in a pickup truck, and my two buddies in the pickup truck took off and left me. They left me. And I was arrested. I'm not going to mention the officer who arrested me, but he's a very prominent officer in the Worcester Police Department right now, very prominent. He said to me at the time, and maybe he's watching this and he'll remember, he said this to me, "Why'd you do that?" And I said, "Well, everybody was doing it." That was my response as a 15-year-old, but everybody was doing it. So that's the root of what we're hearing here is, well, that's how it is. That's how it is. That's how everybody does it, is the excuse for wanting clarity, wanting transparency, wanting honesty. And I think that what we're saying, apparently I did step out, Ted. I fell out the window of the truck. But anyways, what I mean is that approach is juvenile and immature at best, to say that the reason we're doing this is because this. But what Tom is pointing out is it's not just juvenile. You have someone who's willfully and intentionally manufacturing evidence that—
So a civil jury found. That's not my statement. That is the statement of the jury.
That is beyond. And again, if we just talk about as a 15-year-old boy hanging out the window of a car, hitting mailbox with a baseball bat, I went to jail. I went to jail. I didn't have the time to argue it. I was cuffed and I was put in the back of a cruiser and I was brought to jail.
$100 mailbox, not $1,000 telephone.
That's right. And I didn't manufacture any evidence or plant and deceive and try to send somebody else to jail. Now, by the way, I'm not mitigating my responsibility for the things that I've done in my life. If you commit a crime, you should go to jail. And I've talked about this in many places. Some people know that I've talked about it in front of hundreds of organizations about the change in mindset that needs to take place for someone who takes responsibility for their actions. And what I'm telling you is, I don't want to call myself an expert, but I have working knowledge of being responsible for something and taking responsibility. There are two different elements, right? You have to be responsible and take responsibility. You can't just be responsible and be like, well, yeah, we're in charge of that. No, you also have to take responsibility, and taking responsibility sometimes just involves admission of facts that we already know and see. You can't tell me that video that we played didn't happen. You can't. That's a body-worn officer's video.
But no, what they'll tell us though is that we're too stupid to know what our eyes are telling us.
Right, and that is where we disconnect. And by the way, the same criticism is being leveled by local city councilors who are registered Democrats at President Trump, right? In which I completely agree with them. They're saying that he's doing the same thing. But what we're saying is this is the same exact behavior. It's telling me that what I see with my eyes is not real, is literally what we see happening at the national and world levels. This is something you can't tell me I didn't see that pastor get jabbed in the back. And if we go to the Clark University thing, I was there that night, Tom. And we've talked about this before. I was there when there was an incident where another student was stomped on by an officer who has never been disciplined, not a Worcester police officer. This was an officer from another town. at the same point that these incidents were taking place down on Main Street and near City Hall, there was a group of people who came from who knows where, we still don't know where, that were burning down one of the only African American owned businesses in that area, the shoe store near the police station, right? So we know that that was taking place at the same time, and they were not caught in the act. but these two young men and others were being assaulted, and we're saying that's a problem. And then what we hear from people is, you're a liar. But I have a video of it. Oh, but okay, then you just hate police. Oh, okay. So no matter what I do, no matter what I do, the logic is indefensible, because you can't get past it. So in this case, I can't convince everybody. I can only control myself and my work with you, right? What we do on this show and what we write. And so the way that I approach it in my mind is, at least when I write an article, I submit it to you, I know that it's true. It does have my opinions in it. It does. But I know that what I'm saying is true. And then when I stand up on the microphone and I say something to the city council, what I'm saying is true. And that's the only thing I can do. And hopefully there's enough people there that say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should also be true. Right? Right. That's it. That's all we're saying in the whole scope of things, is an approach of being true. Just try to be true.
So in summary, I hope that, again, City Council does not meet this week. It's a school vacation week, and, they don't meet because, they don't do anything anyway, so it's a difference. But a week from Tuesday, a week from Tuesday, they will meet. And unless they find a way to, manipulate the rules again, basically, tell me that that it's outside of some rule that they changed the meaning of in real time to justify it. There will be a petition that asks the city council to hold a public forum and request the city manager order the chief of police to go there and detail what is in the report that's true, and that we're also going to show video on the screen, and the chief is going to break it down for us. Pay close attention to who votes no on that.
I think they're going to actively try to stop it from being on the agenda.
No problem.
And that indicates where they're at, so that's really what it is.
Yep. Complicit with the cover-up of abusing citizens, and in some cases, criminal activity. Complicit in the cover-up of abusing citizens and political and unlawful activity, in some cases. That's where we're at. We have a whole city government apparatus that doesn't care about you at all. Does not care if people are on the street under color of law, known to lie on police reports and known to lie in court, known to, or at least alleged by a civil jury to manufacture and fabricate evidence. They don't care. They don't care at all. Because unless something changes radically, it's hard to really come to any other conclusion. But at least the 6 majority members in the majority that kind of vote in block, and on a lot of issues at least, even one of them that isn't running again apparently cares more about protecting the police department and cares more about I shouldn't say protecting the police department, cares more about protecting bad cops and their re-election, their personal political ambition, than they care about public safety. And some of them love to champion how important public safety is, but they just can't manage to even say anything. Imagine in 5 months, nobody has said the word enforcement about all of these new policies. Policies that were violated in the past were broken. There was no enforcement. And you got yourselves the national embarrassment. You're a national embarrassment to be investigated by the feds. One of 0.63% of law enforcement in the country. And then and they're shameless about it.
And by the way, a couple of our I would say opponents have checked in and watching right now, and again are saying in my personal chat, you guys are just against us again. I would just point out, if you watch the whole show, again, we are for this chief of police. we believe that he needs to be given the tools to do his job correctly, and that he might be the person to lead the city towards a healing relationship. By the way, there are broken relationships between police departments and the public all over the country. This is not something unique to the city of Worcester. Just as there is also a surge in homelessness and a surge in rental prices and a difficulty in all kinds of things that are taking place in our nation, this is not unique to Worcester. This is something that exists everywhere.
No,
and what we want, though, but I can't fix Tulsa, Oklahoma. I can't. But you know what I can do? I can work towards fixing Worcester. And these are things I think can be fixed, unless, of course, we're going to revolution, right? That's the argument that happens with some people. It's like, either we need to turn everything over and start over from the beginning, or can we try within the system that exists, a very, very flawed system, obviously, because we have a history, a track record of people that are Black, brown, women, and poor get abused versus everybody else. It just is what it is. We got an almost 250-year record of this now, folks, with the document that's the Constitution, right? So the system itself, whether it was interpreted incorrectly or not, doesn't matter. The system itself is inherently flawed. But I can't predict revolution, right? And I also don't advocate for violence.
No. But what there's not going to be any goddamn revolution. People have food. There's not going to be any revolution.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but what I'm saying is this: in the absence of a revolution, the best I can do, and the best you can do, and the best anybody who's watching this can do, is try to build reasonable, fact-based relationships where people are cared for. And that can't happen if somebody who has official power, whether they're a police officer or they are a person who cleans the streets, lies on their official documentation on a regular basis. That's it.
And
forget all the dramatic stuff. I'm just talking about at the root. If you're dishonest, you should not be a leader in any capacity. You shouldn't.
And can I just respond to who is us? Who is us that I'm against, allegedly?
Oh,
do you all operate on one brain? Because I don't think you do.
No.
I think you're individuals, near 500 individuals. I'm against people who manufacture and fabricate evidence. I'm against beating up pastors in their church. I'm against lying to try and put people in jail who didn't commit crimes. If that's you, then yes, I'm against you. If you don't do those things, I'm for you. So you can keep pretending like you're, one mob or gang or, organized crime unit or whatever, like gangster type mentality that goes on over there. But I'm for people that don't do those things. If you don't do those things, I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm with it too. I mean, so again, I've given up arguing with officers who say that if I criticize the police department, I hate cops. I'm done. I can't. There's nothing I can do to save that person's mentality.
Like nobody's an individual.
Yeah, just clearly nonsense. So, but what I can do is I know a lot of officers who don't think that way, and recognize that there is a reasonable approach taking place here. It's not the shatter the shield movement or whatever they call it. That's the new one I heard on Reddit, shatter the shield, whatever that stupid stuff is. But so those things are dumb, we don't want to. We're not trying to do that. We want to work towards peace and there's a term that's been used a lot lately called mutual aid. This is the root of mutual aid, where you say to somebody, hey, what you're doing is harming me and my community. Can we work towards that behavior being removed from the approach to us, right? Which, by the way, Chief Saucier in his public statements has admitted they already made one move, which is they changed the policy for dealing with prostitution. They changed it. They changed the statute that they use. They can no longer allow the women to get into the car.
But back to the point, though, that's great. They wrote a thing down. If there's going to be no enforcement of it, it's useless.
Sure. But why did they change it?
Right. They were doing nothing wrong before, but they changed it anyway. This is the key deal with it. No acknowledgement that there is a single problem. Everything's beautiful. We're the victims. We're the victims here. It's unbelievable.
We got other stories going on.
It's been 5 months of crying and whining that you've been victimized.
Yeah. Well,
You guys put people in prison for things they didn't do. They're the victims.
Yeah.
But you think, I mean, some of you, at least, think that by virtue of you did it, that makes it legal. And that is a level of cult of personality that I got to tell you, seek help. And
somebody else.
Other things I'm for, by the way. I am for getting away from the policy of just send the cops to everything because you're put in situations you shouldn't be put in. I am for a robust change in how mental health is dealt with. I know that talking about details, of course, is like sacrilegious, but maybe we can use flaggers on some stuff, and any savings can go into increasing base pay. Because I don't think it makes any sense for anybody who walks around with a gun to work 60, 70, 80, 90 hours in a week. I think that's insanity. I think that you should have time to, recreation, time with family, do stuff that, self-care. But I guess that makes me against cops. Like,
so
get the fuck out of here with that.
Hey, can I real quick to answer Ted's question up there? Ted Costas, who's a candidate for District 4, he wrote, "What's so difficult with being upfront and honest?" Hey, so Ted, I'm going to push back on you a little bit, right? So I see that you are on Worcester Politics 101, Steve Quist's page, and you agree with some of the stuff that he's said, including I see there's some couple thumbs up where he said that This Week in Worcester is fake news, and that you also kind of supported his attacks on Tom and I, right? And so why wouldn't you say those things directly to me? I see you in public all the time, and you don't engage with me. So I would say that part of the reason why they get away with it is because folks like you who are in official public positions, you don't push back on the right things. You feed into the negativity. And so that's why there's no real pushback. I've never heard you criticize the police department. And yet these cases that Tom and I have focused on have video, written evidence, witness evidence, and have been settled by the city. So when I hear you and other candidates for city council and current city councilors talking back to the police department, and it's not just left to Tom and I in the media to do it, that's when there'll begin to be changes, right? Because they listen to you, right? Your voice is considered to be part of that group. So why don't you go after them instead of going after me with your buddy Stevie Quist over there? So like think about it that way. Like I see how Worcester politics works and how I've been here for a long time. That's why. Because that's how the process is. There's no real admission and pushback for positive change. And it starts not just with the officials, but folks in the public who have been prominent for a long time, never questioning anything and leaving it up to me and Tom, and then other people. And then, of course, we're now forced into this group where we're fringe, we're nut jobs, right? Like, and I see that. And by the way, even though I'm blocked from the police union pages, guess what, guys? I can still see it, and because I can still see it, guys. I got plenty of people sending me screenshots and documents of all your little chats, and I get all that information anyway. So you can continue to block me from it, even though what we're saying is reasonable. By the way, Mr. Hazelhurst, he's a regular commenter on there, and again, he documented a civil jury found that he lied and cheated and made up a bunch of stuff, and the city had to pay for that behavior. Not one union page questions him on that. Never once has that happened publicly. We've gotten into these conversations about why are we asking for people to be held to a standard? Because you also want us to celebrate you as heroes, which I agree.
Clean up the scum that you have amongst you, the minority of scum, and you will be heroes.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like it's not heroic for this behavior. This behavior is not heroic. Oh yeah, I read it all the time, Gino. They have me blocked personally, but they don't know that I read it all the time.
And I'll just say all my interactions with Ted have always been good. I don't know what happens on Steve Quist's Mr. Irrelevant's Facebook page. Steve Quist is a guy who just could not enjoy. Steve Quist is a guy who just could not enjoy watching police beat people up more. So he's a moralist scum.
Steve, so I see Ted celebrating Steve as being like a media person that's doing well. And what I want to say is that Steve has intentionally blocked you, me, Manny, Jen Gaskin, Maria, right, and a bunch of other people, and has reinvestigate. You know, all these things happen because he did it live. Ted, you're making excuses for him. He blocked all of us and then criticized us once he blocked us.
Yeah.
That is his practice, and that's a person that you said thumbs up to that. I can go on there and see your things. By the way, I can still see it.
We're talking about Facebook like. I don't care about a Facebook like. I just would like to make the point again.
Let me finish. You got to let me at least finish my point. That what I'm trying to say is that is what is wrong with Worcester. That like towny mentality of, I can say anything I want, but I never can be held accountable for what I'm saying. I'm open to people challenging what I said. I engage with people directly all the time. People have criticized my articles that I've written for you heavily. But you know what I do? I don't block them. I engage with them. I talk to them. I discuss it out with them in person and online. That is what is supposed to be done. But if that's not the case, and that we have people running for office, officials trying to get into that role who are supporting people who are doing that, that's why we're where we're at. That's why we're where we're at, Tom. That's a big component to Worcester.
Well, next Tuesday, as I always do, I'll always make it a point to say hello to the officer working outside City Council. And after I go and yell and scream at the microphone because they'll all roll their eyes, or they'll try real hard not to react, but you can see it. And then I'll do what I always do every time I walk out of there from saying something about the police. I'll look the man dead in the face who's working, and I'll say, I promise I don't hate you. It's not about you.
But hey, and Captain Early, you and I have talked about this a bunch of times. That guy taking over a lot of the public details is one of the best moves ever, because he's calm, he's collected, he engages with people. We watched it happen the other night at Tuesday. There was the public safety chair almost kicked somebody out of the meeting, and the officers had to engage with him. And Captain Early walked over there. He calmed down the person. He calmed down the people. He spoke to the chair of the public safety committee. He resolved the situation. And again, it was moved on and moved past. By the way, it was completely fabricated by the chair of the public safety committee, who was pushing the person back and forth. And Mo didn't help with taking jabs at the guy for personal issues between the two of them. But at the same time, I can see that. And I went out of the room and said to those officers, you guys did great. And I told Captain Early he did great. They did do great. They did. Praise when you need to praise. You criticize when you need to criticize. And criticism does not equal hate. It means I care about you. If I say critical things,
I just want you to be better. That's it. I want you to get rid of the bad people amongst the ranks. I don't think bad cops should be cops. Why is that so controversial? I'm not big into loyalty to institutions. Institutions are housed in a building. It's fundamentally a thing. Groups of people, this whole field of study that's gone on for 300-400 years, called sociology. The group dynamics is basically the study of group dynamics. Groups of people and individuals are different. I'm not big on institutions. I'm big on people. And so I just want to see bad cops go away. Let's bring people into a culture that doesn't tolerate that bullshit that has been tolerated there forever. And that is by no means officers or detectives or even sergeants and lieutenants' fault. That is who's led the police department for the 20 years before this chief, and the Do Nothing City Council, multiple iterations of a Do Nothing City Council that continues to tolerate this nonsense. Because personal political ambition is far more important than public safety. And you'll see that next Tuesday when they all scoff at the idea that somebody should maybe address what's in the report that's true. These people wouldn't even qualify if they were addicts. They wouldn't even qualify to go to AA because they won't even admit they have a problem.
It's the first thing you got to do. You got to admit you have a problem. Yeah, it's a tough thing to do.
Like all the people that are messaging you every one of them doesn't know at least one person off the top of their head that should not be in that police department. Of course they do.
Of course they do, and by just like there's people in every municipal department, it's not just the police. We're talking about a culture of honesty is as a basic requirement for civil governance. That's it. A culture of honesty and accountability is a good thing, not a bad thing. Saying it's bad means you don't want to be honest and accountable. Is what I'm hearing.
And that's perfectly fine. While as a private citizen, just
Right.
don't be a cop. Don't be a cop. You could do, just as we said earlier. I'm not big on going after civilians, but we're talking about. I mean, and again, I keep bringing it back to leadership positions because leadership's tolerating it. They're cultivating it by their inaction.
Yeah, I'm with that too. I also want to push back against people who claim to be media people. That's important too. I think that's again, I think that there's a lot of that, not both on both sides, conservative and liberal, where people don't push back and they just let dishonesty just rule the universe, and it's just not fair. It's just not fair. The big criticism of Sports Illustrated that just took place about them using AI for their articles and then saying it was people, but then a bunch of the articles were wrong. That's legitimate criticism. They should be criticized for that, and any media person who's dishonest should be called out. And in this case, I'm just calling out someone who's dishonest. And I agree with what Gino's saying. 99. It's not just 99. It's probably like 99.6. It's a really high number. We are aware of that, and we say it all the time.
I mean, you're talking. So I think if you're talking about 500 people, right? I come up with this analogy of dice rolling, right? Every interaction for most of the city. I mean, if you're, city council or adjacent, or you're some person of prominence, that's one thing, right? But you're just a person in the city. Every interaction with the Worcester Police Department, with a member of the Worcester Police Department, is a dice roll. It'll probably be fine, right? But when you're rolling 2 dice, there's 36 possible outcomes, right? One of those is snake eyes, which is typically no good, right? So about a little less than 2.8% of the time, you're going to roll snake eyes. And in this context, that is your interaction with the department is one of these people who has been coddled and they've been protected, even though they do things that are patently against the rules, sometimes against the law. And they've been told through their own learned experience, they can do anything they want because nothing will happen. And this is one of you happen to have an interaction, you roll snake eyes and have an interaction with one of these people, all bets are off. All bets are off. Well, what's going to happen to you? And that's why, and that creates a film, if you will. I don't know what the right word is. That creates suspicion of everyone. You see, this very small portion of dirtbags, bad apples spoil the whole bunch. So all I want to see is bad apples go away. So that, people that are afraid of the police department or from, communities that have not been treated well over periods of time by this police department and across the country, that they have less reason to be afraid and therefore you'll get less vitriolic reactions from them, which, some of the things people say to you and whatever else. Maybe if you showed publicly you were cleaning this mess up, instead of denying it for 5 months, people wouldn't hate you. We're trying to get to the same place here. But no, we're not talking about any of that. What we're going to talk about is there was a guy once, and the DOJ uses interns. Stunning. Well, we didn't get to our whole agenda today, but I'm not doing no more. Because I'm sweating, I'm mad, I'm disgusted. Watch. watch closely a week from Tuesday who votes against my petition if they even put it on.
Yeah.
And those are the people that hate you. They don't care about your safety at all.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, so then if that's the case, then we have to move on to the best part of the show, right? That'll help you get through
I really do not want to do like even 10 more minutes because I've had it. I just do want to mention Dr. Rachel Monarrez. Every interaction I've had with her, she has been impressive. It is a terrible loss for the city. And I just hope that we have enough people of conscience on the school committee that will fight back against what will be a strong push from a minority to return to the days of throwing as many kids out of school as possible, about not being concerned with the safety of students because he's your friend, and publicly trying to crucify civilian employees who make 50 grand in a public school committee meeting. I hope there's not. I think there is, but I hope there's enough people of conscience that will prevent us from that tiny backward minority in the school committee to returning us to failed policies of old.
Yeah, so I would say that Mandy got to interview Dr. Monarrez on Friday, which was pretty cool. And I will say that I trust that she had an effective time there, and that she, from her, she believes that the people that can make these things happen and continue to grow the results that the Worcester schools have had are there in place now. The leadership team is there in place, and that those policies and those thoughts and that pattern will continue. I do believe that there'll be a push from the city, from the school committee, from parts of the school committee to maybe do something different, and that's concerning. I think that's significantly concerning. I'm really concerned in particular about there being a couple of school committee members who were not on the search committee last time that have voted with the majority so far that might be different if there's a new search committee. And that's I'm concerned about whether or not they're really going to be who they say they're going to be. And so I'm just being honest, and where we feel about that. And would Mayor Petty then come down and change his approach if he was the swing vote in that situation? I don't know. What does that mean for us? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think she was an incredibly competent civil servant, and I'm very grateful for the work that she did here.
And most by a mile, the most qualified person that's ever been in that position. Let's just leave it though. It's a terrible loss to the city, but I personally wish her well. Her letter said that her husband's not retired. They want to be, they want to go back with family. Where they moved from for her to take this job. I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all. But I respect it, and it's a terrible loss.
It is. I heard a rumor, and I don't know for sure, but I believe she's receiving a significant promotion from where she's at. So, as I understand, but we'll see if I can confirm that. I heard
she said. I think she said she's taking another superintendent position.
Right, but the position.
But the compensation, yeah.
Might be really big
in a city that values education for their students, right?
Sure.
All right.
By the way, breaking news: John Cena just won his 17th WWE Championship. If anybody cares about that,
no one cares because we're not 13 anymore. Sorry if I guess I should say thank you to anyone that just sat through at least my portion of it, a 2-hour-long rant, because I've had it. After that meeting on Tuesday, I've had it. We're going to talk about real shit now, or at least we're going to challenge them to talk about real stuff now. And I want everybody, please pay close attention to how they obfuscate and delay and deny and slither out of it, because they're never going to see anything real.
Wasn't going to do 3 more minutes.
I said 10, and it's been 3. Take us to your favorite part of the show.
No. Again, for the sake of transparency and accountability, Tom, I have to push back on that. This is not just my favorite part of the show. This is the consensus voting public's favorite part of the show. When I ask about Tom's favorite things, and if you just for a minute can imagine the song "My Favorite Things" from The Sound of Music and just replace it with Tom's favorite things, then you can get an idea of where we're going. And we've talked with Tom. Last week we had a spectacular conversation about the diners in the city of Worcester. What was the favorite breakfast diner? And we've done pizza places before. And I kind of want to lean back into food because food is just a good thing to go. And I want to come up with something different though, because the the ground round recently came back, right? And what I wanted to say is, like, what is your favorite like chain kind of restaurant like that? And if there was a restaurant you could bring back, Tom. That's right, Maria. Tom is a bully. He's mean to me. So like, what if you could bring something back? If it doesn't exist, what would that be? And what kind of chain? I'll start to give you a minute because I know you're dealing with the emotions of your powerful presentation.
My favorite. Huh? It's well past time to yell about this. I mean, it's just well past. At some point, I will close all my comments about this. At some point, silence is betrayal.
That's right. That's good. That's a good idea. So silence is betrayal. So then please give us, Tom, your favorite like chain restaurant kind of place.
All right, so favorite chain restaurant that still exists, probably Chili's, because that horrible heartburn on a plate onion is amazing. Restaurant that's gone away, that's a good one. Chain restaurant that's gone is no longer. I mean, is there still Friendlies left?
There's a couple.
Are there a couple that left?
They changed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's a tough one. I'm kind of drawing a blank besides Chili's. I'm sure there's something. Help me out. You go now.
Okay, so for me, it's Applebee's all day. I'm a big Applebee's guy. I don't know how they managed to make the burger taste exactly the same in every Applebee's for 35 years. I can't figure out how they do it, but they definitely have the same tasting burger, which, by the way, if you just want something consistent, that's kind of the deal. But the one that I would bring back is actually one that just recently left, and I feel like it was never truly invested in by the city. The city fought back, against certain things. The planning, which was Boston Donuts. I thought Boston Donuts was incredible, and the city refused to give them a drive-through on Park Avenue for years and years and years. Even though the planning board voted for that zoning, it was held by multiple city councilors for years, pushed back against them, and that's because the lobbying from both Honeydew and Dunkin' is very strong in the city, very strong. And so York Steakhouse, I do remember York Steakhouse. So I would say Boston Donut was one of my favorite places. And people just did Sizzler. Oh, man. Sizzler. Man, that's a great one. Oh, the Ponderosa. Oh, man. Is there any Ponderosas left? I don't even know if there is. I think they might all be gone. I remember the Ponderosa commercials. You remember the Ponderosa commercials?
I do. Yeah, I'm still. Geez, I'm really coming up blank on stuff that gets closed. But easily, I mean, chain restaurant, my favorite is easily Chili's. And besides,
Cactus
Cactus Pizza, good one. Cactus Pizza, good one.
Banging. But that lot is still empty. That's the lot, by the way. That's the one next to Walgreens. It is still empty, that back there, man. They still haven't fixed all that.
How about not a chain? Come on, the burrito place on Highland Street. I don't even know what's there now.
Oh.
What was it called?
Oh, my goodness. The one that was before Boomers.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I forget what that was. Oh, what was that place called?
It's not West Street. It's the one before that if you're coming from downtown. It's like at the corner of...
Yeah. But I forget. Oh, man, I remember that place, too. Yeah.
So Sam's.
Hey, real quick, it's a Tortilla Sam's.
Yeah, Tortilla Sam's. It's not a chain, but...
Right. Yeah, pretty good. By the way, real quick, has nothing to do with food, but Shabooms. I'm definitely missing Shabooms, right? If anybody remembers Shaboom's. By the way, the reason why the Irish Times died was because of Shaboom's dying, right? And I always used to say this to people: the Irish Times' entire model was to collect the drunk people from Shaboom's as they came out and bring them over into the Irish Times so they could fall asleep and fight.
Yeah.
That was the whole business model. And once Shaboom's left, Irish Times is gone. All that's left there is the Palladium. That's all that's left over there.
It's funny. Back then, when that stuff was open, I used to do like stagehand stuff at the Palladium. So it'd be there till, I mean, depending on the show, you could be there till 3 or 4 in the morning if they brought, trucks and trucks of stuff for the show, right? And we would see some things. We would see some things coming down Central Street or whatever that is there, right next to the Palladium.
Real quick, Irish Times, a long time ago, again, John getting in trouble in the City of Worcester. If you remember, they had the glass dance floor. And that glass dance floor broke a few times, if people remember, as various people went through the glass dance floor. And I may or may not have allegedly been involved with one of those incidents where someone went through the glass dance floor, and it may have been me. I cannot completely remember that evening, but that was definitely an interesting place. The Irish Times was definitely lit, as they say. Bugaboo Creek went out of business because they jacked their prices towards the end, just so high. But I love Bugaboo Creek. That was a cool place too. What about, did Rainforest Cafe die? I haven't seen one of those in a long time. Remember Rainforest Cafe with the monkeys?
Isn't that a thing at one of the casinos?
Huh?
Isn't that a thing at one of the casinos?
Oh, they used to be in all the malls.
Oh
Man, I remember A&W root beer. Remember A&W root beer in the old mall, the A&W root beer place. They ice cream floats and burgers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time. Showing us as being old now.
The A&W root beer. Oh, Brigham's too. Was Brigham's there, or was Brigham's at the was that Solomon Pond? I forget where Brigham's was. Brigham's was maybe it was in Auburn. I have to think about that.
Yeah. I need to go do the ice bucket challenge or something. I need to go stick my head in the bucket of ice. Calm down. So I will say that I will try to yell less next time, and we will try to screw it up less next time as always.
You're allowed to yell, Tom.
I mean, I'm gonna do more yelling if we don't see some like real stuff happen. I'm telling you right now.
By the way, if anybody wants to go in on rebuilding Shaboom's with me, let's do it. Let's get a business and bring back Shaboom.
You got like $20 million laying around. All right, so let's try and screw it up. You good?
The appropriate name that Shaboom's used to have.
All right, that is it for us. We'll try and screw up less next time. This weekend, Worcester out. Thanks for